Every morning, I woke up to the blare of my alarm clock, a sound I'd grown to resent over the years. It was more than just an alarm, it was a daily reminder that my life hadn't moved forward. The same tiny one-bedroom apartment, the same second-hand furniture, and the same pile of overdue bills glaring at me from the kitchen counter. This was my world. For 10 years, I'd worked as a shop assistant at a small convenience store. The pay wasn't enough to live comfortably, but it was enough to survive, barely. Day after day, I stood behind the counter, smiling through the exhaustion and pretending not to notice the pitying glances from customers. They didn't see the dreams I had buried deep down or the quiet desperation I carried with me. One Thursday, as I walked home after another long shift, the sky opened up without warning. Rain poured down in torrents, soaking me to the bone. I ducked into a gas station, seeking shelter from the storm. That's when I saw it, the brightly lit lottery kiosk. The sign above it read, $5 million jackpot, draw tonight. I don't know what made me stop. Maybe it was the rain or the weight of the day pressing down on me. Maybe it was the whisper of hope I'd long ignored. Before I could overthink it, I walked up to the counter. "One ticket, please," I said, sliding over a few crumpled bills. The cashier handed me the ticket and grinned. "Good luck. You never know." I stuffed the ticket into my pocket, barely giving it another thought, and trudged home through the rain. By the time I reached my apartment, I was drenched and tired. I tossed my wet jacket over a chair and made myself my usual dinner, a cup of instant noodles. As I slurped the salty broth, I turned on the TV. The lottery drawing was on, and my ticket sat untouched on the coffee table. I almost didn't bother checking. Who wins these things, anyway? But as the numbers were announced, something strange happened. I recognized them. One by one, they matched the numbers on my ticket. At first, I thought it was a mistake. My hands shook as I double-checked the ticket, then triple-checked it. Every number matched. I had won the jackpot. $5 million. I sat there, stunned, my heart pounding in my chest. This couldn't be real. Me. The guy who lived paycheck to paycheck, who counted every penny, who had resigned himself to a life of scraping by, I was a millionaire now. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It felt like a dream, too good to be true. But as the realization sank in, a rush of emotions overwhelmed me, relief, joy, disbelief, and a hint of fear. My life had just changed forever, and I had no idea what to do next. The next morning, I woke up, and for a moment, I thought the night before had been a dream. Then my eyes landed on the lottery ticket sitting on the bedside table, and reality hit me all over again. I had won $5 million. The first thing I did was call in sick to work, not that I planned on going back anytime soon. After all, I didn't need that job anymore. For the first time in years, I felt a lightness in my chest, a freedom I couldn't quite believe. I was finally going to live the life I had always dreamed of. The first few weeks were a whirlwind. The money hadn't even fully hit my account yet, but I was already planning how I'd spend it. As soon as the funds cleared, I walked into the fanciest car dealership in town and drove off in a brand new sports car, something I'd only ever seen in magazines. It was bright red and sleek, the kind of car that turned heads. For once, I wanted to feel like I was someone worth noticing. From there, the spending didn't stop. I bought designer clothes, jewelry, and the latest gadgets. I moved into a luxury apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the city skyline. The fridge came stocked with champagne, and for the first time, I didn't have to worry about whether I could afford groceries. But it wasn't just the material things. I wanted to share my newfound wealth. I treated my friends to expensive dinners, gave my family cash gifts, and even donated to a couple of local charities. It felt good to be generous, like I was finally able to give back after all those years of struggling. Of course, there were indulgences too. I traveled to places I'd only ever seen in travel brochures: Paris, Bali, Dubai. I stayed in 5-star resorts, drank cocktails on white sandy beaches, and soaked in infinity pools that overlooked the ocean. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was on the outside looking in. But I wasn't keeping track of how much I was spending. Every swipe of my card felt like a celebration, a way to prove to myself that I had made it. I kept telling myself, I've got millions, I'll never run out. That illusion lasted for about a year. One evening, I sat down to check my bank account. I hadn't done it in a while because, honestly, I didn't want to know. When the balance popped up on the screen, my heart sank. Out of the $5 million, I had blown through $4 million. I had just $1 million left. Panic set in. How had it happened so fast? I thought about all the things I had bought, all the trips I had taken, all the money I had handed out so freely. It was like watching the past year flash before my eyes in a series of expensive mistakes. That night, I didn't sleep. For the first time in a long time, I felt the familiar weight of anxiety pressing down on me. I had come so far, but now I was dangerously close to throwing it all away. Something had to change. The morning after my financial reality check, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a mug of coffee I wasn't drinking. The thought of losing everything churned in my stomach like acid. I still had $1 million left, but I knew how quickly it could disappear if I didn't change course. I had to do something, but the truth was, I didn't know where to start. I'd never learned about managing money. Growing up, the closest I came to financial literacy was watching my parents stretch every dollar just to keep the lights on. I spent hours on my laptop, researching. I read articles about budgeting, investing, and building wealth. Words like diversification and compound interest were completely foreign to me, but I was determined to understand. I needed to figure out how to make this money last, not just for a year or two, but for the rest of my life. The first thing I learned was that I needed a plan. The reckless spending had to stop. I set a strict monthly budget for myself, something I hadn't done since my days of living paycheck to paycheck. It felt humbling, even humiliating, to go back to cutting corners, but I reminded myself that this was temporary. If I played my cards right, I wouldn't just survive, I'd thrive. One night, while scrolling through a forum about wealth building, I stumbled across a thread about investing. People were sharing stories of how they turned small amounts of money into significant returns by putting it in the right places: stocks, real estate, even small businesses. A comment caught my eye: the key to building wealth isn't just saving, it's making your money work for you. The idea intrigued me. I realized that hoarding what I had left wasn't enough. If I wanted to rebuild, I had to take calculated risks and grow my capital. But what could I invest in? The options felt endless, and I didn't know where to begin. A few days later, while walking through the city, I passed by an old movie theater. The building was worn down, with faded posters peeling off the walls and a "For Lease" sign hanging crookedly in the window. A flood of childhood memories hit me. I remembered how much I loved going to the movies as a kid, sitting in the dark with a bucket of popcorn, losing myself in the magic of the big screen. It was a rare treat back then, but it had always been special. That's when it hit me. People would always crave entertainment, and theaters were more than just places to watch movies, they were community hubs. The idea of investing in the theater industry began to take root in my mind. It felt risky, but also exciting. Could I turn this old building into something great? Could this be my way to start over? I spent the next week researching everything I could about the movie theater business. I learned about licensing, equipment costs, and ticket sales. I looked into how independent theaters were surviving in the age of streaming services. Slowly, a plan began to form. I would buy that theater, renovate it, and make it into a place people would love. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to try. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about proving to myself that I could build something meaningful. I stood outside the rundown theater, staring at the peeling paint and boarded-up windows. To most people, it was an eyesore, a relic of better days. But to me, it was potential, a diamond in the rough. I couldn't help but imagine the laughter and applause that had once filled those walls and, more importantly, the possibility of bringing that energy back. It was risky, sure, but I knew this could be my shot at redemption. The next day, I contacted the leasing agent. My palms were sweaty as I sat across from her in a small office, the kind of place where every piece of furniture looked like it came from a yard sale. "Well," she said, adjusting her glasses, "this theater's been vacant for years. It'll need significant repairs, plumbing, electrical, seating. The last owner tried to renovate but ran out of funds." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "How much are we talking?" When she told me the price, I felt a lump in my throat. It was a lot, a significant chunk of my remaining $1 million. But I reminded myself of what I'd learned, calculated risks. After negotiating for a lower price, I signed the lease. Just like that, I was officially a business owner. That night, I sat down with a notebook and sketched out my vision. I wanted this place to be more than just a movie theater. I wanted it to feel special, like an escape from the everyday grind. I pictured plush seating, an artisan snack bar, and themed nights where families and friends could come together. It wasn't just about movies, it was about creating memories. But dreaming was the easy part. The real work began the next day. I hired contractors to start the renovations, poring over every detail with them. I learned more about wiring, plumbing, and construction than I ever thought I'd need to know. Watching the theater slowly transform was exhilarating, but every dollar spent felt like a punch to the gut. My budget was shrinking fast, and I couldn't afford any mistakes. To save money, I rolled up my sleeves and got to work myself. I spent long days painting walls, scrubbing floors, and hauling debris. My hands blistered, my back ached, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was building something that mattered. One day, while I was working on the marquee outside, an older man approached me. "You reopening this place?" he asked, shading his eyes from the sun. "Yeah," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. "That's the plan." He smiled, nodding. "Good. I used to bring my kids here. Be nice to see it come back to life." His words stuck with me. This wasn't just about me or the money, it was about giving something back to the community. Weeks turned into months, and the theater began to take shape. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I couldn't wait to open the doors. As I stood in the lobby one night, surrounded by fresh paint and brand new seats, I felt a spark of pride. For the first time in a long time, I was genuinely excited about the future. Opening night. The two words that had haunted and motivated me in equal measure for months were finally here. I stood in the theater lobby, dressed in a new suit that I'd saved for the occasion. The smell of fresh popcorn filled the air, and the soft glow of the freshly installed neon sign outside cast a warm light through the windows. The marquee proudly displayed, "Grand opening tonight, free popcorn for all." I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was nervous energy. What if no one showed up? What if I'd spent all this money and poured all this effort into something that would fail? The doubts circled my mind like vultures. But there was no turning back now. At 6:30 p.m., I unlocked the front doors and waited. For the first 15 minutes, the lobby was eerily quiet. I started pacing, my stomach twisting into knots. What if this is a disaster? Then, the doorbell jingled, and a family walked in, parents with 2 kids, their faces lighting up as they saw the sparkling concession stand and the bright movie posters lining the walls. "Wow," the dad said, looking around. "This place looks amazing." "Thank you," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I hope you enjoy the show." After them came a group of teenagers, then an older couple, then another family. Before long, the lobby was buzzing with life. I greeted every guest personally, handing out free popcorn and directing them to their seats. It felt surreal to see the place filled with people, their laughter and chatter bouncing off the freshly painted walls. At 7 p.m., the lights in the auditorium dimmed, and the screen lit up. The audience erupted into cheers, and I stood at the back, watching it all unfold. I'd done it. After months of hard work, the theater was alive again, and it felt like I was too. The movie was a classic, a family-friendly adventure that everyone could enjoy. I chose it intentionally, wanting to bring a sense of nostalgia and comfort to the community. As the credits rolled, the audience clapped, and I felt a lump in my throat. After the show, people lingered in the lobby, talking and laughing. A woman approached me, her young daughter tugging at her sleeve. "Thank you for doing this," she said. "It's been years since we had a place like this to go to." Her words meant more to me than I could express. "Thank you for coming," I replied, my voice steady but my heart full. By the end of the night, the theater had welcomed over 150 guests. It wasn't a sellout crowd, but it was a strong start, and it gave me hope that I was on the right track. As I locked the doors and turned off the lights, exhaustion hit me, but it was the kind of exhaustion that felt earned. Driving home that night, I realized something important. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. I'd taken a leap of faith, and it had paid off. But I also knew this was only the beginning. Running a business was a marathon, not a sprint, and there were challenges ahead. Still, as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but smile. I had found a purpose, and for the first time in a long time, I was proud of the person I was becoming. The days after the grand opening were a mix of excitement and hard work. Word spread quickly about the theater's return, and attendance steadily grew. Families, couples, and groups of friends started making the theater a regular part of their lives. I began introducing weekly themed nights, Retro Fridays, Kid Saturdays, and Indie Spotlight Sundays. These little touches made the theater feel special, and the community responded with enthusiasm. But running the theater wasn't just about creating fun experiences. It was also a crash course in business management, and I was learning on the fly. I quickly realized that passion alone wasn't enough to keep things running smoothly. One of my biggest challenges was balancing the books. Between paying the contractors, buying high-quality equipment, and marketing the theater, I had burned through more money than I'd anticipated. The remaining funds were dwindling fast, and I knew I had to be smarter about spending. That's when I decided to hire an accountant, a no-nonsense woman named Lisa who didn't hesitate to tell me when I was making mistakes. "Alan," she said one afternoon, pointing at a spreadsheet on her laptop, "you're spending way too much on concessions. Those fancy imported chocolates. Cut them. People want popcorn, soda, and candy. Keep it simple." I didn't love hearing it, but she was right. I started trimming unnecessary expenses and focused on what customers actually wanted. It wasn't glamorous work, but every dollar saved was a step toward keeping the business afloat. Marketing was another steep learning curve. I realized that relying on word of mouth wasn't enough if I wanted to compete with streaming services and big multiplex chains. I started running social media ads, offering discounts, and partnering with local schools and businesses to host special events. Slowly but surely, attendance grew, and so did our reputation. Still, not everything was smooth sailing. One night, during a sold-out screening of a popular action movie, the projector malfunctioned halfway through the film. The audience groaned, and my heart sank. I rushed to the booth, trying to troubleshoot the problem, but I was out of my depth. In the end, I had to refund tickets and offer free passes for another show. It was a humiliating moment, but it also taught me an important lesson: I needed to invest in training and hire a small, capable staff. No business could succeed if one person tried to do it all. Over the next few weeks, I brought on a few employees, ticket takers, a concessions manager, and a technician to handle the equipment. It was another expense, but it was worth it. With their help, the theater began running like a well-oiled machine. As the business grew, so did my confidence. I started paying more attention to the details, analyzing ticket sales, studying customer feedback, and researching trends in the industry. The more I learned, the more I realized I could do to make the theater stand out. One evening, after a particularly successful retro movie night, I stood in the empty lobby, looking around at the place I had built. It wasn't just a theater anymore, it was a part of the community. People were making memories here, and that meant everything to me. But I knew there was still a long road ahead. If I wanted to take the theater to the next level, I needed to think bigger. I wasn't just rebuilding my finances, I was building a legacy. And for the first time, I believed I could do it. The theater was running smoothly, but I wasn't content to stop there. I knew that if I wanted to turn this business into something truly sustainable, I needed to think beyond just my small corner of the world. I wanted to grow, to expand, to make this theater the first of many. But how could I do that when I was still learning how to manage the one I had? The first step was getting serious about understanding the industry. I attended trade shows, networked with other independent theater owners, and read every article I could find about the challenges and opportunities in entertainment. One recurring theme stood out: the rise of experiential events. Customers weren't just looking for a place to watch a movie, they wanted an experience. That's when the idea struck me: why not transform the theater into more than just a cinema? I envisioned hosting interactive movie nights, live performances, and even private events like birthday parties and corporate gatherings. It was ambitious, but I believed it was the key to standing out in a crowded market. I began implementing the changes immediately. First, I upgraded one of the smaller auditoriums to include luxury reclining seats and state-of-the-art sound systems. I branded it as the VIP experience. Tickets were more expensive, but they came with perks like complimentary snacks and a more intimate setting. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and customers started booking the VIP section for date nights and special occasions. Next, I introduced themed movie nights with immersive elements. For a screening of The Wizard of Oz, we decorated the lobby like the Emerald City, complete with staff dressed as characters from the film. Families loved it, and tickets sold out faster than I expected. Encouraged by the success, I planned similar events for other classics, Harry Potter, Star Wars, and even seasonal favorites like Hocus Pocus. Each event brought in not just moviegoers but also media coverage, which helped spread the word. While these changes brought in more revenue, they also brought new challenges. Managing events was a logistical nightmare at first. Coordinating staff, handling decorations, and ensuring everything ran smoothly pushed me to my limits. But with each event, the process got easier, and I learned to delegate tasks to my growing team. The most significant turning point came when a local entrepreneur approached me about partnering for a unique event, a live-streamed Q&A session with an up-and-coming filmmaker. It was a huge hit, and the buzz it generated convinced me to explore partnerships with other creatives. Soon, I was hosting live music nights, comedy shows, and even film festivals. The theater was no longer just a place to watch movies, it was a hub for entertainment and culture. Of course, all of this came with risks. I was investing heavily in upgrades and events, and there were moments when I worried I was overextending myself. But each time doubt crept in, I reminded myself why I started this journey: to create something lasting, something meaningful. By the end of the year, the theater's revenue had doubled, and my initial investment had nearly paid off. I started setting my sights on the next big step, opening a second location. It was a daunting prospect, but I knew I couldn't let fear hold me back. I had come too far to stop now. The night after the grand opening, I couldn't sleep. The theater's success felt incredible, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I had tasted the thrill of accomplishment, and I wasn't ready to stop. Still, my mind was racing with questions: could I truly sustain this business? How could I take this newfound momentum and build something even bigger? The next morning, I dove headfirst into planning. Running a theater was challenging, but I'd learned that challenges often masked opportunities. Over the following weeks, I analyzed what worked and what didn't. While the themed nights and live events were crowd pleasers, I realized there was more I could offer. People didn't just want entertainment, they wanted connection, a reason to step out of their homes in the streaming age. I expanded the programming to include movie marathons, trivia nights, and even film workshops for aspiring filmmakers in the community. My goal wasn't just to run a business, I wanted to foster creativity and bring people together. And it worked. Slowly but surely, the theater became a local hub, a place where stories came alive on and off the screen. But it wasn't without sacrifices. Late nights at the theater turned into early mornings spent poring over spreadsheets. My finances were tight, and every investment felt like a gamble. There were times I second-guessed myself, wondering if I had taken on more than I could handle. Yet, with each passing day, my confidence grew. One particularly tough evening, when ticket sales were low, a group of teenagers walked in. They weren't there to see a movie, they wanted to know if they could volunteer. They loved the theater and wanted to be part of it. Their enthusiasm reignited my own. It reminded me why I started this journey in the first place, not for wealth, but to create something meaningful. The theater thrived, and I found myself on a path I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the people, the joy of seeing families laugh together, and the pride of knowing I'd built something with my own two hands. A year after the grand opening, I stood outside the theater, watching the marquee lights twinkle against the night sky. The words, "Second location coming soon," glowed brightly. It was a moment of reflection and pride. This wasn't just a theater anymore, it was a symbol of resilience, proof that even the most ordinary person could achieve extraordinary things with the right mindset. But expansion wasn't just about opening a second location. It was about creating a vision that extended beyond my small town. I began connecting with other independent theater owners, forming partnerships to share ideas and resources. Together, we envisioned a network of theaters that celebrated storytelling and brought people closer in a world that often felt disconnected. As my business grew, so did my sense of purpose. I started mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing the lessons I'd learned the hard way. I told them about the sleepless nights, the fear of failure, and the joy of taking risks that mattered. I wanted them to see that success wasn't just about making money, it was about making a difference. Looking back, I realized the lottery win wasn't the true turning point in my life. It was just the catalyst. The real change came when I decided to take control of my story, to stop letting life happen to me and start shaping it with intention. Today, as I sit in my office, surrounded by photos of the community events we've hosted and letters from grateful customers, I feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The theater isn't just a business anymore, it's a legacy, one that I hope will inspire others to chase their dreams, no matter how impossible they might seem. I'm not the same person who bought that lottery ticket all those years ago. I'm someone who has learned to value hard work, perseverance, and the power of giving back. And if I've learned anything, it's this: true wealth isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in the lives we touch and the stories we leave behind.